Hi, and welcome to this live reading of Collision from the Shatter Hearts series, Book 3 by Nicole Banks, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue, 8 years ago. Chase. I sat in an empty parking lot waiting for my pickup. I couldn't hold it off any longer. No matter how badly I wanted last night to never end, I knew it had to. As soon as the sun came up, I was gone. I didn't bother with a shower. I haphazardly threw on my clothes, and Chris's scent still lingered in the air around me, making me hunger for another taste of her. Last night hadn't been enough for me. I always knew one time would never be enough. I had wanted forever with her for as long as I could remember. It was why I kept her at arm's length for so long. I didn't want to immerse myself in something that could never fully be mine. I was already dreading this time apart from her. These next few months were going to be painful, especially now that I knew how her body felt wrapped around mine. As corny as it sounded, last night had been the best night of my life. I was gone for Chris long before I ever had a chance with her. Now, after being inside of her and tasting her desire, I was completely done for. But, like the never-ending joke that was our lives, the timing sucked. I closed my eyes, turning my face toward the warm summer sun. I swallowed as reality set in. I had barely been home a few months, and I had to pick up and leave again. After everything that happened with Tony and Marcus, after having Chris in my arms, I was forced to leave it all behind. I used to dream of escaping this place, my soul craving a never-ending adventure. Now that I had a real reason to stay, escaping was the furthest thing from my mind. Life could be a vicious bitch when she wanted to be. Nothing ever worked out the way you wanted it to. I heard the engine of an all-too-familiar car in the distance, and with it came the urge to hop back in my car and go home. I hated the sound of that damn thing now. It felt like the devil was calling to collect on a debt I never paid. The last assignment I was on before coming home this summer should have been my final one. The job started taking a toll on me mentally. As much as I craved the adventure, I wanted to put some roots down and be home for good. That car engine should have been a distant memory by now, instead of the harsh reality that it was. I opened my eyes in time to see a leggy blonde in ripped jeans, Converse shoes, and a t-shirt that read "Bite Me" step out of the passenger side of the car. Beck was gorgeous in that blonde bombshell kind of way, and she always tried to downplay it. Her beauty had been an asset. No one suspected the intelligence that hid inside that skull of hers. She was a genius. Beck made what I did on computers look like child's play, and there wasn't anyone who wouldn't give her the information she wanted. She had been the organization's newest and best asset, but she was barely legal, and that had made her a liability. The driver's side opened to reveal my partner since day one, Victor Brown. He was older than I was by 10 years, and he despised that he got stuck with the rookie when I first joined the organization. It took us a while, but we had come to a mutual understanding and respect, especially since these jobs put our lives in constant danger. Victor was half Russian and half Jamaican, with ties to both mobs, even though he denied it. He was built like a linebacker and dwarfed me on all accounts. He had a light complexion with eyes that I swore glowed yellow when he was pissed off, which was more often than not. I chucked my keys at him while he nodded his head in greeting. He picked up my bags and slung them over his shoulder before heading back to his car. He never said much, and that was fine with me. Beck came over and smiled wide, eagerness in her eyes. "You ready to be schooled again on this mission, old man?" She laughed. "Last I checked, Beck, I taught you everything you know. You wouldn't be as good as you are if it weren't for me." I let out a huff. "Are you even point on this case?" She rolled her eyes. "Of course not, because I don't have a penis like the two of you losers. I get to be your backup and save your ass when you royally screw up. Again." I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep the chuckle from escaping. As sexist as it was, she was right. But it had more to do with clearance and her being barely legal than her being female. Some cases just wouldn't sit right with any of us if we let her take lead. Maybe when she was a little older, and even then it probably wouldn't happen. The boss was old school to his core. To him, women were to be protected, not put in the line of fire. There wasn't a woman in our unit except for Beck. I still couldn't figure out how she managed to squeeze her way into our tight-knit group. The boss was going to have his hands full with her. The older she got, the more she was itching to take point on a big case. Beck wouldn't sit idle on the sidelines much longer. I felt my back pocket vibrate. I didn't have to check my phone to know who it was. I was out of the door well before she even thought about waking up. I left her a note. Cowardly, I know. It was hard enough pulling myself away from her sleeping body. There was no way I could have left her with her awake and looking into my eyes with all the love she never would admit to having for me. The vibration stopped and started up again. I felt my lips crack into a smile. No doubt she missed the note I left for her and she wanted to curse my ass out for leaving without saying goodbye. My body tensed as I quickly scanned the empty parking lot. There was some sick part of me that prayed she'd show up and wail on me. I was a masochist, but Chris was a passionate person. Anything she did was from the heart, and it required her to react like a firecracker. There was nothing subtle about her. She was a hurricane, wild, powerful, and breathtaking. You never wanted to run from her destruction. You wanted to dance in her beauty instead. Beck punched me in the arm, bringing my focus back to her. I raised a questioning eyebrow. Ouch, Beck. Rude much? I was talking to you and you completely zoned out on me. She rolled her eyes. I told the boss to let me take this case without you. Your old age is showing you can't even pay attention. I chuckled. Beck had the same eagerness and hunger I had when I first started. It was why we got along so well. Sorry, kid. I reached out to mess her hair up. In a move faster than my eyes could track, she had my hand in a vice grip. She spun me around and pulled my arm at an awkward angle. I could have outmaneuvered her, but as soon as I made the attempt to move, she twisted my arm farther, causing a shooting pain up my arm that had me seeing stars. In a voice that sounded much older than what she was, she brought her lips to my ear. I really want point on this case, Chase. Don't give me an excuse to take you out of commission by breaking your trigger arm. I told you, I hate when people touch my hair. She pulled my arm farther, causing me to suck in a sharp breath. Fuck, this shit hurt. I was sure she'd snap it right off with one tiny pull, and wouldn't that just solve all my problems? I'd be out of commission for the next few months. I could stay and start a life with Chris. But I'd always have to come back to this organization because of the favors I had to pull with the Marcus debacle. I wanted out for good, not some fake downtime. Victor's deep chuckle broke through my musings. Chase, you rank the highest in damn near everything they've tested us on. Are you not breaking out of that hole because she's a girl, or are you trying to give the poor thing a false victory? Beck's focus shifted from me to Victor, and in the process she went slack on her hold. It was enough to break free and push her back. Victor walked over to Beck with an amused glint in his eye. He rarely laughed or smiled, but he found Beck's tactics rather entertaining. You never had him, Beck. He went to mess with her hair, but the look she gave him had him thinking better of it. Victor smiled as he got eye level with her. Sweet little Kutnyunik. Beck huffed and stumped back toward the car they came in. I'm driving. Let's hurry this shit up. I saw the softness in Victor's eyes and as he watched Beck walk away from him. I chuckled. I couldn't help myself. Victor and I were at the top of our organization. We've hunted and gone up against international terrorists, drug dealers, you name it, without breaking a sweat. Yet there were women half our size tying us up in knots. Victor's eyes shot to mine, and they did that weird glowing shit. Great. Now he's pissed. I cleared my throat, knowing I was overstepping. It ain't my business, but you know boss man isn't going to be too happy if you decide to shit where you eat. He grunted. How about you don't talk to me about my love life, and we won't talk about the reason you want to leave the business." He rounded my car, getting into the driver's side without as much as a backward glance. I scrubbed a hand down my face. This was going to be a fun few months. I made my way over to the passenger side of the car Beck and Victor rode in. I checked my phone, curious to see if Chris left a message. My pulse picked up when I saw the little red notification. My lips tugged into a small smile when I saw the notification was a text from Chris. "I found your note. You're a dickhead. Be safe. Please." It was short and to the point. My smile instantly fell. I expected a drawn-out response from her, a battle of some sort to have started, but that's not what I got, and on some level, that bothered me. I powered off my phone, having a hard time getting my feet to move. Every instinct I had screamed for me to go back home and back to Chris. "Yo, you getting in, Chase?" Beck's voice startled me and I cursed, forcing myself to get in the car. As soon as the doors locked and she started pulling out of the parking lot, I felt myself panic. I had an overwhelming urge to jump out of the car and run back home as a sense of dread settled heavy in the pit of my stomach. I leaned my head against the headrest and took a few deep breaths, trying to calm myself down. This wasn't the first time I was leaving, but it was the first time I left when all of me wasn't willing to go. "You'll be back before you know it, Chase. Stop worrying." I looked over at Beck, who just shrugged. "This isn't the first time you're leaving her. Why is now different?" Because this time felt like I was leaving her for good. Even if I came home, things wouldn't be the same with us. Present day. Oh, where have you run off to, Chase?" I mumbled the words over and over again, wondering where my next mark could have possibly hid. I hunted him for the better part of 3 years, and I couldn't find any trace of him. It was turning into a tiresome exercise trying to find a person who seemed to have vanished into thin air. If I hadn't seen him with my own eyes, touched his flesh with my own, and felt the blunt edge of the knife he dug into my back, I would have thought he never existed. The sound of someone choking pulled my attention back to my surroundings. I knelt down beside my latest conquest. It took me longer than I cared to admit to find him. The bastard was sneaky, but I had to give him his credit. He outsmarted me twice now, and if I had the time, I might have enjoyed our game a little longer. He smiled up at me. It was anything but friendly. The poor bastard was slowly bleeding out, but he still had some fight in him. In another lifetime, the guy could have had my respect. Right now, though, he was just pissing me off, trying to prolong the inevitable. "You know, you're never going to find him." He coughed up blood. I leaned in closer, using my knife to pierce a part of his flesh I hadn't already cut. "That's where you're wrong. We found you. We'll find your team, too." He grunted. "But look how long it took you to find me." I dug the knife in deeper, satisfied when he groaned in pain. "Boss." I turned, seeing one of my associates step into the room holding a manila folder. "It's the information we've been looking for." I felt the tug of my lips looking back at my captive. "You were saying?" I stood up, reaching for the folder. I flipped through the contents, no longer able to hold back my smile. Not only had I found the team responsible for bringing down my entire organization, I also found the nosy journalist who blew the lid on my operations back in New York. I had been hit from both ends. I put my trust in the wrong person, and for that, everything I built came crumbling down around me. I closed the folder, turning back toward my captive. "Did you know those two were working the same case?" My captive laughed. "We got lucky. The cards fell exactly where I needed them to shut down your entire organization." I nodded, feeling the spark of my temper begin to flare. What were the chances the two people who had a hand in bringing me down had an intimate connection? I regarded my captive. "Why'd you choose a team that had emotional ties?" "You had to know, short of putting a bullet in my head, I would have found a way to go after them." "You'll never be able to take out that entire team. I chose them for a reason." My captive started coughing up blood, and I turned toward my associate. "Torch the place. We got what we came for." I looked back at my captive. Nobody is untouchable. You know that better than anybody. Death isn't always the punishment people make it out to be. A lifetime of pain and regret go a long way in a person's suffering. I headed outside, pulling out one of my burner phones. I dialed a contact I hadn't used in a long time. He picked up on the first ring. Pack your bags. I got a job that's going to take you back to the States. I'll be in touch.